Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this one, we're going to be covering a Frost and Fire Dagger build, essentially getting as many Frost procs as we can, and then using Fire to on-proc and then re-proc Frost. This should be a fun one. These are really popular daggers. We ended up going with the Bloodstained Daggers. I'll explain that in a bit. Let's get into the details on this build. So after trying to figure out what the best AR or damage on daggers are and the best general scaling we could get, I ended up opting for the Bloodstained Dagger simply for the fact that they have the innate bleed on them and then they scale with a B in strength, which is really quite fantastic in terms of damage, at least from a dagger standpoint. This is New Game Plus 7, Journey 9, by the way, and we're able to get a substantial amount of damage from these daggers, and the two Ashes of War I went for here were Flaming Strike, and then I went for Chilling Mist. They're the two best, at least in my opinion, because you get the extra coat, and then you get decent AR or damage on the daggers, and it's something that can combine for a lot of damage. It's never going to equal bleed. It's not going to be nearly that overpowered, but it's going to be a lot of fun for a setup like this. And we get a little bit of innate bleed with these too, so we're able to get one or two procs throughout the fight as well, but we're mainly focusing on being able to proc Frost and then on-proc it, essentially seeing how many Frost procs we can get and then build up our damage that way. And something with daggers is a quick way to do that because they hit so quick and they have a lot of build-up. They're definitely a solid choice. First, where do you get the Bloodstained Dagger? The easiest place to farm it for me early was the Weeping Peninsula. They only drop from the demi-human chiefs, I believe, and there's a couple, I think, in Mount Gelmir as well, but for me, this was the easiest one in the Weeping Peninsula, right by this grace here, and you're able to just go to them, kill them, try to get the drop, and then either teleport back to the grace if you're on newer consoles, or if you're on older consoles, you're just going to want to run back most likely to the grace, and then attack him again and see if you can get the drop. I believe it's around a 4% drop rate, which isn't too bad. You're not going to be farming these like you're farming the magma blades, where it's something where you're just going to be constantly having to do this for hours. For me, it took probably about 20 minutes to get two of them, and it wasn't too bad. Now back to this build, it can be really powerful with several Frost procs in many circumstances, while also building up successive attacks and a little bit of bleed as well. The reason why there's only two really good Ashes of War to do this with is because Chilling Mist gives you that extra Frost coat. Chilling Mist, by the way, is the one I use for every Frost build. I've been doing that for a while now. It's just fantastic. You get that base Frost and then an additional 40 Frost on the Ash of War itself for 40 seconds. Then on the right hand, as far as Flaming Strike, you get 40 seconds of fire while keeping the physical damage in AR, so that's a fantastic choice too. And these combo for a lot of damage while also being able to proc Frost, a little bit of bleed as I mentioned, and a good amount of damage in general. And we went for a lot of strength here too because the daggers scale really well with your strength stats, so that's a big bonus for us because that gives you a little bit of versatility as far as your build goes, while also being able to run a Fire and Frost build simply by having a fairly good amount of strength. There's a lot of other weapons you can use, and then we ran Intelligence as our secondary stat to get the magic damage on the offhand one, which we're using in Cold Affinity. So I wanted to show this to you guys real quick if you don't know where to get this since I was down here anyway, but one of my favorite weapons in the game, one of my favorite Faith weapons, is actually a Faith Dex weapon, is the Godslayer's Greatsword, and this is where you get it in the Divine Tower of Caelid after you beat the Godskin Apostle. It's one of the best weapons in the game in my opinion, and it's an absolute blast to use too. So as far as mobs go, this is going to be about as good as any dagger build is. It's something where you can just shred individual mobs, but if they do group up, you can use something like Flaming Strike, obviously, to get some damage in and to take out mobs, but it's something that's not really like anything overly crazy. If there's an entire group or massive amounts of mobs or you're fighting knights and whatnot, it could be a little bit challenging with daggers as it always is because you're using lighter weapons, you're trying to build up those successive attacks, and you don't have those stellar, ridiculous amount of jump attack damage either. Even so, it can take care of most mobs with ease. It's nothing too challenging here. By the way, if I didn't mention it real quick, if you're not subbed, definitely be sure to sub. There's also an awesome Discord that has over 400 people in it. If you're not a part of that, you're going to want to be a part of that too, but definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button. By the way, a little bit of announcement here, but generally speaking, we're going to focus on Eldenring all the way up until DLC. We may do a little bit of Armored Core in there as well because that's obviously from software as well, but generally speaking, we're going to stick to Eldenring content, generally Souls content, and we're going to be doing a ton when the DLC comes out too. You're definitely going to want to be a part of this channel. So for NPC invaders, this is something that's quite powerful. You can easily handle them with ease, you're going to see on screen here, because you're able to get the frost procs, and then you're just able to build up a lot of successive damage in general. I know with a lot of the dagger builds, it's the same with a lot of the bleed builds and stuff, because we're all building up those successive attack hits, as you'll see my talismans later. I went over that once in a video that basically explained all the talismans, but for any quick weapons, generally speaking, Rotten Wing, Millicent's Prosthesis, and then since we're doing a little bit of bleed, you can use Lord of Bloods too, and you're able to absolutely shred enemies as you build up those successive attacks. So that's something that you definitely want to consider using if you're using anything that builds up successive attacks. Just stack those two. Millicent's Prosthesis and Rotten Wing should always be your first two choices if you're using fast weapons. And then, of course, you're going to go with Lord of Bloods too if you're doing any bleed at all, because you're going to get another 20% damage for 20 seconds. And as far as Frost and Fire, as I mentioned, it's not going to be something that's incredibly overpowered. It's not going to beat Bleed and Frost. It's not going to beat Bleed and Bleed. It's a little less meta, but it's still powerful, and it can give you a lot of fun and enjoyment out of doing something a little different too. And as I mentioned, since we invested some in intelligence, if you want to throw on a staff and use some spells and whatnot in combination with this, you can do that also to add a little bit more versatility to the build. And as far as this troll goes, I just threw him in here to see how much damage we could do to him and whatnot, but it's time to go over equipment, stats, and everything you're going to need to know for this build. So we're using two Bloodstained Daggers, one with Flaming Strike and one with Chilling Mist on it. Any seal will do. We threw the White Mask in for a little bit of a damage boost there if we do proc bleed, and then Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, as I mentioned, Millicent's Prosthesis, Lord of Blood's Exultation, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, and then you're going to use something like the Thorny tier, and then you're going to throw in the Fate tier as well, so you can do all the buffs like Golden Vow and everything you need there. Let's get into stats. As far as stats go, this is very much a strength and intelligence build. This is something where your primary stat's going to be strength because it scales really well with the Bloodstained Daggers, and then second to that, you're going to go for intelligence. I went for 15 Fate so we can get it to 25 with the Fate tier so we can do Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. And then you're going to want at least 50 Vigor in a build like this because you're up close and personal, obviously using the daggers. Everything else is up to you. I think we had 51 poise and decent armor, but you can probably have a little bit better armor given the fact that everything we're using is lightweight. Let's get into buffs. So for buffs, we're going to drink our tier first, which has the Thorny tier in it, and then the Fate tier so that we can do buffs. Then we're going to use Golden Vow. You can use Blessing Spoon if you want to as well. Then we can use Flame Grant Me Strength. And then I'm on Xbox, so it'd be Y and LB to Chilling Mist, to use Chilling Mist, and then Y and RB back, use Flaming Strike. You end up with a Fire Dagger and a Frozen Dagger. It's a good combination. I hope that video is helpful as far as a Fire and Frost Dagger build. It's something that's really powerful. If you want to change it up from Bleed, or Frost Bleed, you can go with Fire and Frost too to get a lot of damage out of it, and it's certainly fun too. If you're not on that Discord, definitely be sure to join it. By the way, this week's challenge winner is OG1J. He won the challenge this week, and upcoming, there's another challenge on Discord too. Congrats to him. He's champion of the Discord of the week and gets the shout out. So definitely be sure to join that. Take part in the challenges too. It's been really fun doing those so far. And if you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.